Hoping you're all well. They say absent makes the heart fonder, but I can't imagine be any more fonder than we are having it, so I hope we'll see you soon. And today's sugya reminds what Rabbi Yakov once said. He said that don't think that the American Rabbanim are any smaller than the European Rabbanim. The problem is they have more difficult shilas. And today we're going to talk about a sugya in Hilchos Shabbos that has many applications. I guess we could say it's doing business on Shabbos for an Erlich Yid. How could that be? Which Erlich Yid will do business on Shabbos? I'll give you a typical case. Someone asked, he has a growing business, and it's basically a national business, and he gets many Goyish customers, and he can't close on Shabbos. People call, they want to know what's doing, and he can't just leave an answering machine that takes a message. He needs to hire answering service, a human being that answers the phone, makes somewhat of deals, some sales, maybe appointments, but he can't just leave the business totally inaccessible on Shabbos. Could you hire a Goyish answering service to do that service? Or we had someone that has a growing business, and he wants to hire a sales representative to go and sell his merchandise to companies, and the salesperson does it on Shabbos. And I think what was really the stimulus of today's sugya, a young man that I know from the yeshiva called me, and he has a great offer to become a partner in a nursing home. But it's a out-of-town nursing home, it's all Goyish, and it operates on Shabbos like during the week. Is that his responsibility? The fact that the malach is being done? So I must tell you, even if these particular shaylos are not negayah to you, but as we'll see, we're touching upon the Ikka Yesodis of Hilchos Shabbos, which of course negayah to all of us. Now there are a variety of questions that we will, Bez Hashem, touch upon this morning, but the common denominator, it is pertaining to the Hilchos Shabbos. And it's inspiring when you learn the sugya how Chazal carefully protected the Hilchos Shabbos. People say, well, what's wrong? It's not me. I'm sitting home and I'm learning and I'm davening on Shabbos. It's a guy. That's the problem, not the solution. The fact that Amir La'akam is definitely asa, but people don't see it that way. It's very tempting to hire a guy and make some money. It's not me. But Amir La'akam is a definite issa. And Yid once told me, people think Amir La'akam is a heta, they don't know it's an issa. But I told him, I would say it even better. People think Amir La'akam is not just a heta, it's a way of life. And people that in the business world sometimes have this notion. And there's a lot to say about Amir La'akam and Hilchos Shabbos, but suffice the words of the Minash Shemayim, one of the great Rishonim asked questions Minash Shemayim, and he recorded the responses. In Siman Dalet of the Truas Minash Shemayim, he asked about a situation of Amir La'akam, and the response was, Lo'isige ba'yod, ki sokol yisokol ayor yore, kol nageya b'divreyim, ki nageya b'bavas einai. You're playing with fire. You're starting up with Bari Olam. That's the pupil of the Bari Shlam's eye. And then he concludes, B'kama b'koimas asu chacham chizdak divreyim, yoyse mishal Torah. There's more of a protection regarding Amir La'akam than even an Issa Deraisa. And as you learn, as we'll see, there's a tremendous sensitivity to Amir La'akam. In fact, I saw interesting Prima Godim in 3 places, in Reish Mem Gimel Aleph, Reish Mem Dalet Aleph, and Reish Mem Gimel Sifkat and Yud Gimel. In all 3 places, the Prima Godim makes a point of asking, we'll soon see that regarding Amir La'akam, besides the Issa, there's also a concern of Maris Ayin. Even if it's mutter, but it looks bad. Frag the Prima Godim, the whole Amir La'akam is a midrabanan. So how do you make a gzeira on a drabanan? Isn't that a typical gzeira l'gzeira? Says the Prima Godim that since it's Amir La'akam is based on a pasuk, it's like a deraisa. We treat it like a deraisa. So it's this combination, the chaymer of Amir La'akam, and the fact that it's a big nisayan, and it's very tempting to just hire a guy, quote unquote. You will see, and we did see throughout the Dairis, there was a tremendous zehirus in it. There's a lot to say, but suffice the words of the Ksaf Saif in the end of Siman Mem Aleph and Archaim and the Chuvas. He says, I have no problem being makel mi ikidin in the shala you asked me, because I found Rishonim that are makel. But since it's a dar parutz meruba, and people learn to be more makel, I will not be makel, even though he felt it's mutter. because people expand the heta and it becomes a michshel. More in our times, the Chelkas Yakov and Archaim, Simon Samach, Rav Moshe, and Chele Gimel, Lamed Hey, also take the stance that you can't be mekel regarding business, Amir La'akum, even if it's mutim yikidin, because there's a very big mokoim for michshel. In fact, the Reb Shlomo Eigen, the Tshuva Simon Ches says, when it comes to shaylas and Amir La'akum and business, only Gedolei Hadar should take the liberty of paskening. No? If Shlomo Eigen said Gedolei Hadar only could do it, how could I even give a share about it? But I wanted to share with you the information, the sugya, and you'll know what to ask and what's a shayla. So I think the most important yesod that we have to clarify, and then we should be able to discuss the shaylas, is an accurate halachic definition of Amir La'akum. Believe it or not, the Amir La'akum is not the way it's translated literally. Amir La'akum is not telling a guy on Shabbos to do malacha. There are many sources, but suffice the words of Mishtabur and Reish Ayin Vav Sif Kat and Yud Aleph, that even if a guy is passing by your house and he sees you sitting in the dining room, your lights are off, and he realized there must have been a problem with the lights, so he walks in without being asked, and he says, I'll put on the lights, don't worry, you don't have to tell me to do anything. The Mishtabur says you have to tell him to please leave. He can't put on the lights for you. If he insists, so you have to throw him out. You can't allow a guy to do malacha. I didn't tell him a word. But that's the issa. Amir La'akum is not telling a guy. I would teach Amir La'akum, a guy does malacha for a yid. Imagine someone buys a business run by a guy, and he buys the business with the workers. The workers just transfer from the owner to the yid that's the owner. So they're working for years, Shabbos, he doesn't tell them a word. It's like autopilot. But avada you, the yid has to stop the goyim for working for him. Amir La'akum is lav dafka amira, lav dafka tzivoy. It's a guy does malacha for you, and we'll soon see how the word for you is so critical. Now you'll ask me why. So let's pashit. We once discussed this. The Yis Amir La'akum is either like the Rambam says, Laitei Shabbos kala beinecha, the person that has a guy do malacha for him, so there won't be a trace of the Shabbos. Rashi says one of the reasons Amir La'akum is that because the guy is your shliach, even though ain't shliach l'dvar aveira, ain't shliach l'Akum, but l'chumra yesh shlichus. So based on both these reasons, it doesn't need a dibur. The kala beinecha certainly exists even if you don't tell him. And shlichus, if he's doing it for you, yes, shlichus l'chumra. So basically, the deciding factor is the guy does malacha for you. That's the problem. Now let us make some definitions of agreements, of various agreements that you can make with the guy, and then I hope we'll have enough information. The typical case of a Amir La'akum is what the Poskim refer to as a schir yoim. A schir yoim is basically a hired worker. I'll give you a good example, a very clear example. You're making a Shabbos simcha, and you need a guy to put on the lights, put off the lights, or the oven. Of course, that's an isacham, that's a Amir La'akum. But you know why this is a perfect example of Amir La'akum? Because you hired him to work on Shabbos. Sunday you don't need him, Friday you don't need him, you could do it yourself. So the job was Shabbos related, he's hired to be at your service for the Shabbos Kodesh, and that's precisely the Issa Amir La'akum. It's a Shabbos-related job. You tell a secretary, take home an overload of work and do it over Saturday and I'll pay you. You're paying the guy to work for Shabbos. That is a bona fide Issa Amir La'akum. Again, the defining factor is the guy is hired to work for you on the Heilig of Shabbos. Now, there's a different arrangement that's called a kablan. A kablan in English is a contractor, where you don't hire the guy to work on Shabbos. It's a job-related hiring. The classic example is a cleaner, a mechanic, a tailor. You pay the mechanic to fix the car for a fixed price. There's no difference to the guy or to you when he does it. You give it in and you'll pick it up as soon as possible. If the guy delays and calls you Friday afternoon, listen, I couldn't do it all week, could I do it Saturday? No, you're Jewish. The answer is you could tell him do whatever you want. Why is that different than the first case? Very simple. The Schir Yoim, he's being at service for the Yid for Shabbos. The Kabbalan was hired to complete the job. You could fix the car on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If he decides to do it on Shabbos, that's what's referred to as a daita de nafshe. That's his convenience. He was hired to do a job that is not intrinsically related to the Shabbos. And this is in Shulchan Aruch Reish Mem Daled Aleph, Reish Mem Zayin Aleph, and Reish Nun Beis, Siv Beis. That's mamish our definition. Let me show you. In the case of a Schir Yoim, he's working for you on the Shabbos. That's the deal. You don't need him during the week. The Kabbalan, he's doing a job. He's doing on Shabbos for his benefit, for his convenience. That is not a problem. Now, let's say you're giving you're giving a suit to the cleaners on Thursday, and you pick it up on Monday, and he tells you, by the way, I'm going to do it on Saturday because it's a slow day. You could tell him to do what you want. But let's say you bring the suit into the cleaners Friday afternoon, and you say, I need it it's a Saturday night from Alava Malka, and you have to have it ready during the winter at 6 o'clock. So since you're telling him to do it on Shabbos, I mean, you're not spelling it out, do it on Shabbos, you're just giving him an impossible scenario. That the Paiskim call, Shulchan Aruch calls, in Reish Nun Beis Beis, Koiveya Malachtoi. If you make a Kabbalan agreement, it's a job-related agreement, but you specify do it on Shabbos, Zok the Mishtabur, it's Kishluchai, and it's so beautiful. Because now, even though it's structured as a Kabbalan, but if you specify do it on Shabbos, he is hired to be at your service to work on Shabbos. So you torpedo the main heter. The main heter was a daita de nafshe, but a kaveya malachta is the very opposite of a daita de nafshe. I always like to bring out a contrast, besides a mashal, a contrast shows the point. Mailing letters on Friday afternoon, mi'ikid din is muta, because the Goyish mailman could process the mail on Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whenever he wants. Your stamp doesn't get you more than just the rights to have it delivered. But you can't force him to do it on Shabbos. So he's being paid to do the work, that's a Kabbalan. But if you hire overnight delivery, Friday afternoon, so you're paying them to work for you on Shabbos, that's a Amir La'akum, that's a Kivei Malacht. I'll give you another example, which introduces us to another key term. Let's say you hire a guy to go to a Goyish neighborhood and sell masks. Hopefully that's a dying business. We'll get back on Bez Hashem soon. But you tell a guy, you got 20% of all earnings. 20% of what you sell, you're getting. Can he work on Shabbos? And I want to make a disclaimer. I'm talking about today, all of what we're talking about today, a guy dealing with goyim. If the guy will sell masks to Freya Yidden, Chas v'shalom, then it's Lefnei Iva, it's Messiah. I'm talking about there's no Lefnei Iva, Messiah, there's no possibility of a Yid doing any Issa. A guy selling to goyim. So this is of course a Kabbalan. It's not, he could do it when he wants. You could sell it on Sunday, Monday, you could sell it whenever you want. But this has another feature that makes it more mutter. This is what the Prophet can refer to as a oris. Now, oris literally is a sharecropper. In the olden days, a person had a field, he gave it over to a worker, and the worker worked in the field diligently, and he got a share, a percentage. That's a much better heter than even a Kabbalan. A Kabbalan was not hired to do on Shabbos. He does it on Shabbos for his convenience. But he doesn't get a share of the profit. He doesn't get, if the cleaner cleans your suit, he doesn't take a part of your suit. But it's enough of a heter because it's not Shabbos related. But the oris, I want to revise the definition of the word oris. Sharecropper is an outdated term. We're going to call an oris a share profit. He shares the profit. He sells the masks and he gets 20% of the sales. That's a Kabbalan plus, because from every bit of malacha he does, he gets a certain percentage. So it's not just you didn't confine him to Shabbos, but you're paying him for each job. So every mask that he sells on Shabbos, he's getting 20%. That is an even bigger heter than a kablan, and Rashi in Rabbi Dezar Chaf Alf Beis, but more clearly in Rabbi Yudin Tinyana Chaf Tes, he says the fact that he's getting paid per piece makes it a full-fledged adaita denafshe. So we have three possibilities. Schir Yoim is a Shabbos-related job that it's categorically asa. Kablan is doing you want. If he does it on Shabbos, adaita denafshe. And an Oris even a bigger heta because every bit of work he has a vested interest. Now you can understand a little more what I said, that the real definition of Amir La'akum is he's working for you. So a Schir Yom is working for you on the Heilig Shabbos. A Kablan or a Oris is working for his own interest. Now, of course, the Yid is gaining, but the guy is not so L'Shem Shemayim. He works for his own interest, so he's not working for you. He is ultimately working for himself. Now, to apply this to the merit of Shilas, let's begin. A person has a real estate that he wants to sell, so he calls a Goyish real estate broker. And again, I want to make a disclaimer. Whenever you need work to do, of course, L'chatchila, we should call Yidden. Yidden need panos, especially in these times. Whenever I say you call a Goyish worker, I'm talking about if you can call Yiddish worker, L'chatchila, v'chei achicha imach, oikonim yadam yisecha. Always try to use Yiddish workers, but let's say you have a real estate in a Goyish neighborhood, and you call a Goyish real estate broker. He should sell the property for you. There's no chashash lefneiva, mesayeya. Now, he wants to sell the property whenever he can. And if someone calls, they want to see it on Shabbos, could he show your property to a potential buyer on Shabbos? It does not sound very kosher, because he's selling your property on Shabbos. But the answer is, this is a perfect heter. Not only is it a kablan, because he could sell it whenever he wants, but this is an oris, because he gets a significant percentage of the sale. So if he decides to work on Shabbos and sell it on Shabbos or promote it on Shabbos, this is a full-fledged adaita denafshe, and it certainly would be mutter. Next case, a growing company wants to hire a sales representative to promote their item, to sell it, to go to companies, to introduce companies to the item. Now, in the business world, Saturday is a good day because people are off. Can a Yid hire of course, a Goyish, a sales representative that will deal with Goyim on Shabbos? So again, it doesn't sound very promising. How could he sell your items on Shabbos? But again, this is a case of a oris. If he gets a percentage, this would be a heter gomer. I saw the Teres Chaim, Reb Chaim Soif, in Reish Mem Hey Yud Beis. He speaks about giving schayra be'kamissyon. So commission sounds like commission, but in those days, commission actually was a consignment. But it's same idea. You give someone a commission to sell on consignment. He's allowed to sell it on Shabbos, but of course he stresses that he can't use the Jewish company, because we'll soon see that would be a case of Marisayan. He can't drive around with the cones, Shem Shabbos business, and he's driving without car and selling items. The Marshag in Chelik Beis Kuf Lamed Gimel was asked about hiring an agent. Now, it doesn't sound like a CIA agent. An agent is a salesperson. Now, he has an interesting shayla, a little more details. There was a Goyish agent that worked for a Yid 5 days a week, not on Shabbos. He had 2 days off, but the Sunday he was busy. If he would be hired to work by a second Yid that wants to hire him to be an agent, it would probably be working on Shabbos. In other words, 5 days a week he's working for another Yid, so that's out of the question. It's only 2 days that he has available, Saturday and Sunday. But it's obvious he's working on Shabbos for the Yid, the new Yid, because Sunday he's busy. So he asked the Marshak, could he hire this agent to work for Saturday and Sunday and pay him for the days? So says the Marshag that since he's getting a percentage, he's a kaplan. Again, as we said, it's an oris. He's probably going to do it on Shabbos. That's hadaita denafshe. He could do it on Sunday, but he wants to go vacationing. So that's his choice. He could do it on Saturday, he could do it on Sunday. So he says this is a kablan with adaita denafshe, and it's mutter. Now consider the next question, and I advise you approach with caution. Let's say you have the same sales rep or the same agent, but you want to send him to they call it a fair, they call it a show, where he buys and sells items, but the problem is the sale, the fair, the show is only on Shabbos. So you can approach this Goyish sales representative and say, I arrange transportation, go to for the fair, but do whatever you want. So the truth is, again, it's the same sales representative with the same Oris agreement, he gets a percentage, but the obvious problem is he's doing it on Shabbos. It's only taking place on Shabbos. So we might say, wait a minute, if it's a regular kablin, which is a regular heta, I can understand that it's awesome, because if it's only on Shabbos, it's kaveya malachte. But since this agreement is he's getting a percentage, maybe since he's an oris, which is even a bigger heta, oris is mutter even if it's a case of kaveya malachte. But the emphasis is not really convincing at all, because zil basa taima. Why is kaveya malachte asa? Because kaveya malachte undermines the het of adaita denafshe. It's not adaita denafshe. I'm telling you to go on Shabbos. So who cares if it's a bigger heta of oris? But at the end of the day, the oris is working for you. He's getting his percentage, that's true, but you're telling him to go on Shabbos, because the fair is only on Shabbos. And that's why the Rav and Reish Mem Gimel Zayin, and the Mishnah Berurah and Reish Mem Hey Yud Ches and the Sharat Zion, paskins like this. The Rav says, oris is mutter, rak yizor shalei yoim aloi sheyase b'Shabbos. The Marshag has three tshuvas, actually, Beis, Mem Beis, Beis, Pei Gimel, and Beis, Kuf Lamed Gimel. And in all three tshuvas, he writes that even though there's a bigger heta called oris, but kaveya malachtoi would be asa even by an oris, and of course certainly by a kablan. So this is an important point to consider. And taka, that's why the case that we began, the case of the fair or show that's only on Shabbos, even though it is structured to be a kablan or oris, but the fact that it's only on Shabbos, there would be no heta to send your Goyish representative to that sale, to that fair. In fact, the Magen Avram in Shin Zayin, Sifka and Gimel, quoting a Goyish Maimonides, says you could give a Goy money to buy things, to buy your item that you need, and go to the shuk, but as long as it's adaita denafshe. But if the shuk, the sale is only on Shabbos, no, that is a typical case of kaveya malachte. Says the Magen Avram, even if you don't verbalize, you tell him, hey, I'm giving you money, buy items, whatever you want. But it's a joke, whatever you want, it's only on Shabbos. So that's kaveya malachte. So let's be clear, a sales representative that sent to buy or sell for the Yid, and he could do it any day he wants. As long as you don't stipulate go on Shabbos, he could do it on Shabbos. In fact, the Rav in Reish Mem Dal Sif Chav says as long as it's not Kaveh Malachtai, even if you know he does it on Shabbos, you don't have to stop him. Because once it's a daita denafshe, it's not a mir la'akam, like we said. The definition of mir la'akam is he's doing it for you. Once he's doing it for his convenience, even if you know he's doing it on Shabbos, it's okay. But if the only opportunity is on Shabbos, so you have to be realistic, that is considered a case of kaveh malachti. There's an incredible Sefer Chassidim in Siman Reish Samach Beis. He says a person should not live in the city where the shuk of Goyim is open on Shabbos, because he'll come to do Avera. Look how precautious Chazal were. Don't live in the city of the marketplace, it's too tempting. I just saw a letter written by Rav Zochan Levrach. It's printed in the Malachim Oim Nayach Amid Tov Ayin Zayin. I didn't see it in the Shevet Levi, but he writes a story that he writes B'didi Avi Uvda, a Gevir Gadol that I knew, and he told me he wants to, from Chutz La'aretz, and he wants to invest in a big factory that makes glass. But I told him I don't advise it, because when you deal with glass, you have to work 24/7. That's the Metzias. And you're going to end up with problems of Amir La'akum. And I told him, Rav Pinchas, I think that was his name, Rav Pinchas, whoever plays around with the Shabbos is going to lose. Please don't go into this business. But Letzari, he didn't listen to me. And a few short years went by, and he lost all his money. And he had to run away. But Oifen Mavil, he had to escape for his life. Because you can't play around with the Heilige Shabbos. But the Chiddush is, even to live in a place where it's tempting, we have to avoid. But certainly to do things that are wrong, to send someone to a show, an affair that works only on Shabbos, is a clear-cut Kaveh Malachti. If a person has a lot of extra work, doesn't have the time to do it, can he ask the Goyish secretary, of course, it's a real guy, not a Sophic guy, but take home the work and do it, I'll pay you. So it sounds good in a certain sense, because the guy is doing it in the privacy of their home, and there's no Amaris Ayin. So that I say, there's no Amaris Ayin, but there's the real Makoyesa. You're hiring or paying the guy to work on Shabbos. I saw the Minchas Yitzchak Chelik Tessim and Chafal, I already said it, business tshuva. Someone wanted to enter and become a partner in a law firm that was run by Goyim, and the firm operated on Shabbos, and he wanted to become a partner. So he says, parenthetically, I know about a certain lawyer that's Shabbos, but he doesn't work, of course, but he hires the secretary to take all his phone calls and all the work. He says, that's a real Amir La'akum, because he commands us to work on Shabbos. Now that's Pashut. So here, even if you make it into a Kabbalan, but it's still Kaveh Malachti. Is there a way of finding a way of giving a Goyish secretary work to do over the weekend? The answer is, we should understand that there is a way. And that is, don't just make it a Kabbalan. I'll pay you per hour, because per hour is not a Kabbalan. Per hour is a Schir Yom. If you structure it in a way that you get paid per piece of work, per report or per bill, whatever it may be. But if you get paid, if the secretary gets paid per bit of work, and this is the big and it's reasonable that they could do it on Friday afternoon, Matzai Shabbos, or Sunday, you give them enough time to do the work without doing it on Shabbos. And you make it per piece, so then you have a Kabbalan, or maybe even Oris, getting paid per piece, and there's no issue of Kaveh Malachti. Now, of course, it has to be reasonably possible to be done without Shabbos. Mishnah Berurah, in Reish Mem Daled Chav Daled, quoting the Taz, he says, if you give a guy to work Friday afternoon, and you want it Sunday morning, and the only way they could do it is if they stay up Shabbos. They only could do it if they stay up the entire Matzah Shabbos and do it, or they'll do it on Shabbos. So you might say, well, physically, they could do it on Matzah Shabbos, but they can't be expected to stay up a whole night and do it and not work on Shabbos. So that's not a daita denafshe. I mean, physically they could do it, but that's not a daita denafshe. So again, to give a secretary work to do over the weekend, if you make it a schir hours, schir yom is awesome. If you make it a job-related payment per piece, or per work, the whole group of work that has to be done, and it's possible to do on Friday afternoon, Matzai Shabbos, Sunday, the whole Sunday, and the guy will only do it on Shabbos, it's fine. That would be a daita denafshe, it's not being done for you. Next case, which introduces us to a very important factor in Amir La'akum. A person called the roofer, he had problems with his roof, and they're coming. Bekitza, his mazel, Shabbos morning, the truck pulls up. A goyish roofer. But here's the problem, because if you know, roofers come, they don't have to even ring your bell. They just take out their ladder, start climbing and doing the work. The question is, can he allow them to work on Shabbos on his roof? Or better yet, if they're respectful enough to ask you, can we work today? Can he allow them? Or the gardener shows up on Shabbos. So the truth is, both the gardener and the roofer, and basically many repairmen, are real kablanis. They don't get paid per hour, they get paid per job. You pay the roofer to do the job. So it might be mutter, because you didn't tell them Shabbos. Forget, you would hope they would come on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They come on Shabbos. And indeed, the gardener, the roofer, and similar type of employments are really kablan, should be mutter. But here we come to a different factor, which is based on a Gemara of Avodah Zarah, Daf Chaf Aleph and Beis, quoted in Shulchan Aruch Reish Mem Dalid Aleph, that even if something is a real kablan, but it's only mutter if it's done b'tzina. If it's done b'rabim, there's a maris ayin. People don't know that you made a kablan agreement. They'll think it's a schir yoim. So even if it's a kablan as mutter, but there's a maris ayin involved. In fact, the Shulchan Aruch adds will soon apply this. If the work is being done in a exclusively goyish city and there's no yidden to be maris ayin, it's fine. But the point is, if a gardener, roofer, etc. pulls up to your house in a Jewish neighborhood, even if it's a kablan relationship and it's mutter mikra din, it is minimally a maris ayin. You'll ask, but the whole amir la'akum is a drabanan, is a maris ayin a gzeira or the gzeira? The answer is true, but we saw the Prima Godim that amir la'akum is like a deraisa, and Chazal did make a gzeira on amir la'akum. The question is, Lamaisa, everybody knows that a roofer is a kablan. Everybody knows that a gardener does not get paid per hour. So why is it maris ayin? No one will think foolish thoughts that you pay the gardener per hour. And the Mishtabura in Reish Nun Beis Hivkat and Chafei says when it's Yadu ala kol that this is a kablan agreement, there's no maris ayin. So now we're back to our question. If it's a kablan mutter and it's not maris ayin, so why can you allow the gardener or the roofer to do the malacha? So here we come to a third factor, and they're all important for our sugya. The Ramah in Reish Nun Beis Sif Hey, based on a Gemara in Shabbos Yud Ches, says something that makes noise and disparaging to Kedushas Shabbos is not permitted, even if essentially it's mutter. Lamashal, if you set up a mill to grind the wheat Erev Shabbos, so really that's mutter. But if it continues on Shabbos and it makes this loud noise that contradicts the serenity of the Kedusha Shabbos, that's an Issa D'Rabbanan of Av Shamilsa. This is not a Midas Chasidus. This is an Issa D'Rabbanan. If you allow work to be done on Shabbos, that is Av Shamilsa, says the Mishtabura, all agree, as Mishtabura in Sifkat Memches says this, Kol Kiyoytze B'zeh HaMashmiya Koil Av Shemilsa V'ikizilusa de Shabbata. So even if it's not a problem because it's a kablan and it's not maris ayin, but something that is disparaging to the menuchas Shabbos would be awesome. And a perfect example, a roofer that's banging, fixing your roof, and certainly the beloved gardeners with their blowers that make a lot of noise, that's certainly a stira to Kedusha Shabbos. That's why really any repairman, I should say, that was asked to come at his convenience and he comes on Shabbos, again, a plumber, electrician, whatever it is, but he's working in your house, that's Av Shemilsa. Not for the outside, but when he comes and goes to the outside, and when he's in your house for you. In fact, the Paiskim say that technically a Goyish maid should be allowed to use a vacuum cleaner in the house or a dishwasher, because they could wash the dishes by hand, or they could vacuum, they could sweep. So the vacuum cleaner or the dishwasher is a daita denafshe. They could get the same results without doing malacha. And that's true. That is a daita denafshe, if they could do it without malacha. But a vacuum cleaner and a dishwasher qualifies to be a av shemilsa and is awesome. So here we see, besides the crucial question of kablan versus chir yoim, there are two additional factors, and that is the maris ayin and also the zilzul Shabbos. So before we're quick to be makel, we have to make sure all three questions are avoided. First of all, it has to be a daita denafshe, not kaveh malachtoi. It can't be marasayin, it can't be zilzal Shabbos. The gardener and the roofer fail on at least the zilzal Shabbos aspect. Even if it's not marasayin, it is still a question of zilzal Shabbos. Next question, and that's a big question, and that's construction. I'll give you a typical case. Someone is building a development that is out of the city, and a Goyish builder, again you should take a Yiddish builder, but he took a Goyish builder, and all the workers are Goyim. So everybody knows that building is a compliment. No one pays a builder per hour. That's ridiculous. That's paid for the job. So technically, there's no issa of amir la'akum by a worker that's working for a builder, construction, that is always kablan. But the obvious problem is Yilusa de Shabbos. He's working, and if Eden could end up seeing this, it will be a terrible zilzal Shabbos. And that's why the Poskim were very strict about construction and building on Shabbos. No one builds in the privacy of your home. It's usually built outdoors. But there's another factor. This is interesting. The Magen Avraham and Reish Mem Dalet Ches, he says, we can't build on Shabbos because the Goyim lahavdil don't allow work to be done on their Chaga. And if we allow work to be done on our behalf on Shabbos, it's a Chilul Hashem. You hear that? We have to at least live up to the standards lahavdil l'goyim. It's a powerful wake-up call. I think it's a timely message. Someone once told me we have to learn lahavdil from the Arabs about tznius, even in the hottest weather, how they dress with extraordinary tznius. That's the same Magen Avraham, because if the goyim are doing it and we're not doing it, that's a Chilul Hashem. But be that as it may, a lot has been written about construction on Shabbos. Because mitzad echad, it should be mutta, it's kablanis. But mitzad sheni, it's generally zilusa de Shabbos. The only question is if there's a shasat chak, if there's what to be makel. So there's a beautiful tshuva of the Heilig Sam Soif in Siman Samach. A Yiddish city was bombarded as part of the war that was raging at the time, and a big part of the city was destroyed. They left hundreds of Yidden homeless, and they had to rebuild. So the Chassam Sofer wanted to say that since Lamaisa it's mutter mikid din, it's only a kablan, and it's only a question of marasayin, right? The Yiddish city is marasayin, but b'chai gavna that it's a mamish a question of close to bikuach nefesh. So to be a Chassam Sofer, you have to be a Chassam Sofer for this, but he seems to be makel when it's known that it's a kablan, and the zilusa the Shabbos fact, of course, has to be overlooked when we're talking about something as serious as this. But the general attitude, let me just be clear. Bi'alacha says in Reish Mem Dal, Moshe, although he questions the Bi'alacha, but he agrees in Chel Gimel Lamed Hey that we don't allow construction to be done even by Goyim because of the Zilzal Shabbos. What's Negeya is if there's construction being done in a totally Goyish area. It's mamish no cheshash of Yid ending up there. It's out of the tchum of Yidden. There's no Yidden in that area. So let's make a cheshbon. It's a kablan. There's no concern of maris ayin because everybody knows it, and there's no concern even of zilzal Shabbos. So if you tell the worker to work and you better finish by so and so day, and that means you're demanding for them to work on Shabbos because otherwise you can't reasonably finish the job. So that's kivei malachti. But lemaisa, if you tell them to work at your convenience, and they choose to work, and again, it's a place that there's absolutely no marasayin. You know, Mr. Brewer says if a yid could go for a stroll and end up there, if it's not out of the tchum, it's still marasayin. I'm talking about it's totally out of a Jewish area, so it meets all requirements. It's not marasayin, it's not zilzal Shabbos, and it's not kablanis. It's not schayim, it's kablanis. Is it done? Again, I don't think so, because again, people are very careful with this. But basically, I would say what could be negeya if you're constructing a dvar mitzvah, beis medrash, a shul, a mikvah, and it's important they should finish as soon as possible. So some paiskim were makel because b'makayim mitzvah you could overlook the chashash of maris ayin. But others, and I saw the Pesachei Tshuva quotes the Ksaf Sofer amongst others that says, Adarabah, you're building a mitzvah, that's a bigger chashash michshel. People can say, oh, see, for a mitzvah you're allowed to do work. So it seems that even b'makei mitzvah, we don't allow a guy to work in construction. Again, in a situation as drastic as the Chassam Sofer's case, with the Chassam Sofer's plates is what to be makel, but basically construction comes to a complete halt on Shabbos. The Sefer Chassidim in Siman Shin Memches has a story about someone that hired a guy to do work b'kablanis, and he was working on Shabbos, and people were complaining, you're not allowed to do this. But he says, no problem, it's kablanis. A few days later, nothing was left of the house, not to him or his children. He doesn't say what, but a terrible catastrophe, which obviously was an einish. Now the question you might ask is, wait a minute, if this clearly was a kablan, why was he punished? So the answer is pashut. Even if it's a kablan, and I saw that in the Pirish Kadman on the New Sefer Chassidim, even if it's a kablan, but there's still a concern of marisayin. That's what he says. I would say more pashut. Even if it's not marisayin, af shemilsa, or chil Hashem. So maybe he was talking about a place that was way out, but then it wouldn't be marisayin either. So obviously you have marisayin, af shemilsa, and chil Hashem. Mida toiva meruba. Let's be more positive. The Chesed Alaf, that's the Peliyoyitz in the Sefer on Shulchan Aruch Reish Mem Dalet Beis. He said, I'm going to tell you a story for posterity. Someone built a house, and he spent extra money that no work should be done on Shabbos, even though it might have been mutter. He doesn't say why, but it might have been mutter, but he was makbid to go the extra mile and let no work take place on Shabbos. Vahi Hayoim, there was a sreif in the whole city, and when the fire threatened to engulf this person's house, suddenly the wind came and saved his house. So he writes, Zeu schorei ba'olam hazeh. Sheiseh beisei mutzel meyesh, was safe on fire. La'olam haba alachas kama v'chama. So obviously, the Heilig Shabbos has special protection, and we have to be careful to maintain the proper kedusha. Now, what needs, the next question, which a lot of money at stake, can a person allow a store to operate on Shabbos? He has a store, I'll give you a good example, it's part of a shopping mall, and to close Shabbos is a big loss. Very often there's also a legal concern, because if you're part of a shopping mall, you have to conform with their work hours, and you're supposed to be open on Shabbos. So a person feels he has to get a heta to leave his store operate on Shabbos. So, we're not dial a heta. People say, I need a heta, so, I can't just make a heta. But if it's done right, there might be a tzad lahakol. First of all, if you make it into a kablan oris agreement, you pay the one that's going to run the store that he gets a certain percentage. So then, of course, that makes it a little better. But you can't say, I'm going to pay you percentage, but you better be open on Shabbos, because that is kavei malachtai. But the truth is, this has a problem. We're going to soon see what the problem is, because the Lamaisa, the Yid is benefiting. And I saw in a wonderful sefer that helped me, some of the Marmakaimis as well, the sefer Mischa B'Shabbos, page 226, is the best idea for this type of scenario would be to work it out into a franchise. That this business is owned and run by a non-Jewish proprietor, and the Yid receives a percentage of profits. So that really turns the table, so to speak. Now it's the guy working and giving the Yid a profit. No, profit's allowed to take from this case, because it's done beheta. But it's hard to structure it in a way that it totally avoids Amir La'akum, because if he's working, and generally, especially in your case, you have to be open on Shabbos, so that's why you hire him, but you don't tell him, but you want to be open on Shabbos. That's really the deal. A factory that's in a business district that no one lives there might also be a reason to be makel to allow, again, non-Jewish workers keeping the factory running on Shabbos. Again, it doesn't sound too kosher, but if you think about it, if you have someone that's getting a percentage of all profits, and he's not being told to work it on Shabbos, that might be mutter. But generally, it's always a problem, because you want him to be open on Shabbos, and that's part of the agreement. But if you say work whenever you want and just get the workload done, and the guy decides to keep it open one Saturday, And again, the Yid doesn't benefit if it's Saturday or Monday, as long as he gets the production. That might be a case that it's mutter. Now, Eitzah Tova Kamashwan, before you do any construction, any store being open, any factory being open, please ask a shayla, because Lamaisa, you're dealing with the Heilige Shabbos. You think about the Mesiras Nefesh that Eden showed in the early 1900s. It came out a question of Pikuach Nefesh not to work on Shabbos. But our Zaydis rose to the occasion and showed great determination for Shabbos. So for a Yid just to stam, open a store on Shabbos because he wants to make money, you got to be very careful. And I'll show you where there's a Makam Litos. The Ramah, the Shulchan Aruch in Reish Mem Daled Vav, the Ramah actually spells this out. A Yid bought the rights to collect taxes from the government. Now that was a panasa. He collected tax and he got a percentage. And he wants to hire a guy to work on Shabbos on his behalf. So it's mutter because he's paying the guy a percentage to the nafshe. But the problem is, lamaisa, it's a marasayin, it's perfahesya. But since it's a makayim hefsid, because the Yid bought the right to collect tax for a few weeks, let's say, and if he doesn't collect on Shabbos, also he'll lose all those taxes. So it's a makam hefsid. So you're allowed to overlook the is of maris ayin. So you see, makam hefsid is mutter. But think again, that's not making profit. That's his parnasa, and he invested to make a parnasa. If he doesn't collect all the taxes, he's losing part of his parnasa. That is a makam hefsid. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Sivkot and Lamed Hey. But if someone wants to make a bar, and he hires a guy to run the bar, he'll say it's makam hefsid. That's not makam hefsid. That's meniyas revach. You're losing out the opportunity to invest in a business. No, every time we don't work on Shabbos, we're losing out. Teretz, you're not losing. It's meniyas revach. It's lost opportunity to benefit. There's a great distinction between hefsid and meniyas revach. And therefore you have to be careful. But makam hefsid is the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah is mekel to overlook maris ayin, but it has to be meniyas. It has to be a hefsid, not just a meniyas revach, a lost opportunity of profit. Because every time we don't work on Shabbos, there is that meniyas revach. Rav Vosna is a frightening tshuva in Chela Gimel, Siman Chav Gimel, where he says also this. He doesn't quote Mishnah Berurah, I don't know why, but he says the same yisoid, that the only heta is makam hefsid, but when you see gevirim investing in businesses on Shabbos and they call it a hefsid, it's not a hefsid, it's meniyas revach. And he writes, and that's a allusion to the story that I mentioned earlier. I knew of a gevir that he opened a business and he lost everything because he didn't listen to me. In other words, even after you might say I'm losing, but if it's a meniyas revach, that's not called losing. Mishnah Berurah and Sivkot Lamed Hey gives us the right guidance. Habayteach b'Hashem ve'enoi mechapes tzedadei kulais al Shabbos. Ashrav, how fortunate he is. People have this shayla. They have a PayPal agreement, which means customers could pay online to their account, and the money goes from the customer that owes them the money into the Yiddish account. Can this be left open on Shabbos? In other words, he has a way of receiving payment on Shabbos. So if the Yid instructs to go, you better pay me on Shabbos, within the next 24 hours, and it's obviously on Shabbos, so that's Kavei Malachti. I'm talking about the Goyisha customer can pay whenever he wants. The Yid's making money on Shabbos. So this is basically not a problem. He's not doing any malacha. His kelim are doing malacha. That's the regular case of Shavisas kelim, that's mutter. Just like if a Goyisha customer sends you a check in the mail and it happens to come Shabbos morning, you're not doing an issa. So that l'chayr is mutter. The only problem is, according to Rabbi Kiva Eiga in the famous Chuvas in Ksavim Kuf Nun Tes, we're now allowed to make a Gemar Kinyan on Shabbos, even if you're not doing anything on Shabbos. But if the Gemar Kinyan takes place on Shabbos, is also maybe this PayPal is a problem. But you think about it, it's not true, because first of all, the Gemar Kinyan is not a Shabbos. Kinyan was made before; it's just receiving money. Also, you could have in mind not to be kind of the money until after Shabbos. And I saw in that wonderful sefer that I mentioned, the Mesxar Shabbos, on page 215, it's very lamdish teretz, that the issa of Rabbi Akiva Eiger is if you do something on Friday, that programs the kinyan to be chal on Shabbos automatically. Lamashal pidyon ben or mechirat chamas, he did on Friday to be chal on Shabbos. So the Yid did a ma'isa on Friday to make the Gemara kinyan on Shabbos. That's us. But here, it's the guy sending him on Shabbos. There's no Yid's involvement. That's not a violation of Rabbi Akiva Eiger's big chiddush. Someone asked me which crowd which they gave for this Yom Tiv. He has auto pay that he pays his bills through a fully automated computer service. Various bills, every Friday or every other Friday, whatever it is. And next week, Habaleinu Tova will be Shavuos on Friday. Does he have to stop the auto pay from paying the bills because it's Yom Tiv? Now it's not a regular Erev Shabbos, it's Yom Tiv. The answer is this is even less of a question because there's no kinyan taking place. It's just that it's a fully automated payment. That's no different than putting on an air conditioner or a refrigerator that works on Shabbos. Or like sending mail on Wednesday and the Goyish company gets it on Friday and on Shavuos. As long as you didn't do anything on Shabbos, that's okay. A very tricky question is a growing business or a medical practice that just can't close for Shabbos. So they want to hire what's called a answering service. Now let me be clear. Answering machine that basically is a machine that takes orders is no shiloh whatsoever. I'm talking about hiring a guy, a human being that's going to answer phone calls, and for a doctor or medical office take appointments, for a business take orders, make sales, make references. It's a guy working for the Yid on the Heilige Shabbos. So obviously this does not sound kosher at all. After all, this is a real case of Amir La'akum. And of course, it's very easy for me to say it's asa and it shouldn't be done. But if halachah is what to be making, we have to present that and we'll tell the person, Habaycha Yivcha. Pashtis, this is a real Amir La'akum. The fact that the guy is working in the privacy of his home, there's no Maris Akum, but it's even worse. It's the real Makor Yissa. What you could do is make a Kaplan agreement. I'm paying you for answering the phone in the next 3 days. Friday afternoon, Saturday, and Sunday, do at your convenience. That, l'chayra, and I'm going to pay you one lump sum. So that l'chayra kablan. And that seems to be a kablan, and also it's not kivei malachta. You didn't obligate him to work on Shabbos. But here we come to a beautiful part of this sugya, and there's a very important Mari Abu Hav, which is printed in the back of the Torah in Siman Reish Mem Gimel. The Magen Avram in Sif Katan Beis and Mishnah Berurah in Sif Katan Yud quote it, so I'm going to put it all together because the Magen Avram adds more and Mishnah Berurah adds more. I'm going to try to make it very simple and easy to understand. So Mari Abu Hav was discussing the following question. Someone had a merchatz, and Goyim, Yidden, whatever came, and they washed. The question is, can they keep the merchatz open on Shabbos for Goyish customers? So, Pashit, it's a kablan. He's not paid for Shabbos only, he's paid for the whole week. And just like a kablan is mutter, so too this merchatz should be mutter. Said Maria Abu Hav, a beautiful, clear-cut distinction. When is something mutter kablan if it's a daita denafshe? For example, I hired a worker, a Goyish worker, to take care of my field. I'll give him a percentage even. Fine. But he's not working on Shabbos related. He has to do work X amount of time to make the field produce. The Yid doesn't care when the guy does the work, and the guy doesn't care. So if the guy chose to work on Shabbos, that's the Goyish decision, and the Yid makes no benefit from that. Because the Yid wants the work should be done at your convenience. That's adaita the nafshe and his mutter. But our case is fundamentally different. Now listen, because it's beautiful. Our case, if he's paying him a lump sum, good, fine. Now, if the guy says, great, I don't have to work on Shabbos, I'm going to stay closed the whole Shabbos. I get the same salary anyhow. I got to be crazy to open the merchatz. Who gains if the guy works on Shabbos? Only the Yid. The guy will be happy taking a day off and work 6 days a week and not work at all and get paid the same salary. Got to be crazy to work on Shabbos. Only the Yid gains when the guy opens on Shabbos. That's not a daita denafshi, that's working exclusively for the Goyish benefit. And therefore, such an agreement that the guy is working on Shabbos and only the Yid benefits, that would be us. Oh, this l'chayra is the same regarding that answering service. He's getting paid to work for a lump sum 3 days, and he doesn't have to work on Shabbos. So the fact that he picks up the phone on Shabbos is only benefiting the Yid. So again, in that Sefer Mischa b'Shabbos, he says a very pashat the Eitzah, make the agreement that the guy gets paid, the calling service, or you call it the answering service, gets paid per phone call. Oh, then that makes it an oris. Now he has a vested interest in every single phone call. And the emes is the Mishnah Berurah there that I mentioned earlier says beferish, if you make the merchatz into an oris agreement, that the guy gets part of every entrance fee to the merchatz, and every time someone comes, he gets a part of it. So that's not just a kabbalah, that's a oris. If you have a combination of these two factors, the guy gets paid per phone call, and he is not contractually obligated to pick up the phone on Saturday. He has a weekend, he gets paid per phone call without any requirement to pick up the phone. That would be a heter. Again, you have to be careful, you shouldn't be kavei malachte, and it shouldn't be amir la'akum. Now, of course, the question is, well, imagine Khalila, you forget and you call up the answering service, he goes, yes, Cones International. So now already it's already a Marasayan, because the company's name is Cones. So the answer is, but you don't call up on Shabbos. Only a guy calls up. There's no Marasayan by a guy. And besides that, more often than not, it's not a Yiddish company. I know of a very successful company that someone pointed out to me. I was amazed. It was named after one of the Gedolei Hador. They took his name and they just reversed the spelling, and it's an international company. So you don't have to call it Cones. You could call it a different name as long as you make money. That's the yikah. So this answering service, if it's structured properly, it's a kabbalah. It's not a kavei malachtai, and of course it's no marasayin. It's mut. And now we could say achrein chaviv, or maybe achrein hichbid, and that is a yid having a nursing home or having a partnership in a nursing home. So let me be very clear. This needs a share for itself, of course not in the 2 minutes we have left, but I want to give you the understanding of the shayla because it touches upon all of our yesodis. If you have a nursing home that has chaylim, so tzarchei chayla, amutai de'akum, so you could do whatever is needed. But we're talking about a nursing home or an assisted living home that's running full-fledged Shabbos activity, the billing, the phone calls, and everything. The malach is being done not l'tzayra chayla. In other words, the malach is taking place by goyim throughout the Shabbos. Is there a heter for a yid to allow this to go on? Could you buy into this business? So this young man from the yeshiva that I know, he called me, he said he heard there's a heter if you sell it to a guy. I said, wait a minute, you sell it? Yeah, sell it, make a token sale like Mechiras Chametz. So I told him, wait a second. Mechiras Chametz is not a hoax, chas v'shalom. You look at the Chasam Sofer and Archaim Samach Beis and Yeridei Shin Yud, how he defends the Mechiras Chametz, and you're not allowed to be mefakpik on it. And if you want to see what a Mechiras Chametz is, go when the Rabbanim actually sell the Chametz to a guy, the intensity, the tense atmosphere, they work with every possible kinyan, avoid every possible suffix. This is a real deal. The Mechiras Chametz is a real deal. But even so, you look at Reb Shlomo Kluger and the Chuvas in Elef Shlomo, Chashlomo Tzadik Tes, Kuv Beis, Kuv Chav Tes. You can't compare Mechiras Chametz to selling a business to a guy, and there are obvious reasons. But legally, it doesn't work. If you really sell the business to a guy, and the guy doesn't have a license, you can't operate the business. So you can't just make a fictitious, phantom, hocus pocus mechira. It has to be legitimate mechira. Now, a lot has been written, as I told you, it's mamish a share for itself. There is a Divrei Chaim who allowed a mechira on Shabbos to allow business to be made, but the Divrei Chaim later limited the application of it, and many Gedolei Tzadikei HaDoros were very against making any form of mechira. But again, regarding a nursing home, it's even more problematic because it has to be legally run by someone that has a license. So, again, in that Sefer Mischa Shabbos, he has a very nice shtickle Siman Yudalid. He says the real Eitzah would be if you employ a non-Jewish director or a management company, they're in charge of the daily running of the business. It's not their company, you're not selling it to them, but they're responsible for the smooth running of the business, which includes hiring and managing the many employees. This is an eitzah, because now all the employees are working for the non-Jewish management company. But you'll ask, but wait a minute, Lamaisa, still the Yid is gaining only because the more residents he has, the more money he makes. So that's why he adds, you should also give a small percentage of the income to the management company. So what you're doing you are promoting it from a regular kablan to a schir yain, to an oris. Once you have an oris, then even Maria Buhav's concern has been negated. In other words, it has to be more than a kablan. It has to be an oris. And as Mishnah Berurah Sivkat and Yud says, regarding the merchats that we spoke about, regarding the calling service that we spoke about, if the guy has a vested interest financially in every bit of work and every bit of profit, then he's not just a kabbalah, he's an oris. But as he adds, you have to be careful that you can't obligate anybody to work on Shabbos. You give him over the job, do it at your discretion. So obviously the goyim will have an interest in making it run smoothly weekday on Shabbos. Plus, if it's known to be a Yiddish company, you have to put up a sign, this premises are run by a management company, so that would avoid the Marisayan. So obviously, before you invest in a nursing home, you would have to sit down with a Rav and with a lawyer, and you have to write a perfect agreement. This is not our regalachas. I just wanted to mention this because look how many points we touched upon. The Kabbalan, the Oris, the Maria Buhav, where the Oris is okay, the case of Keveya Malachta is also, the fact that you could be mutter but maris ayin, and the ikka is, before you have a shayla, to ask a shaylas chacham. Just to briefly review what we learned today, as all in Yonei Shabbos, that's the Babas Einav HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but more so Amir La'akum, as the Sefer Min HaShamayim tells us, be very careful, the fact that it's the protection of Shabbos, Shabbos Kala Beinecha, and it's very tempting to be makel. We have to be careful, that's Al Makar Bracha. The real definition of Amir La'akum is not telling a guy, instructing him, it's the guy doing for a Yid. Lab Dafka Mira. But that would justify a schir, a kablan, or oris, because he's not doing it for you, he's doing it for himself. A schir yoim is a typical Amir La'akum because he is servicing you on the Shabbos. Any work that's done by the guy for his own interest, mostly he sells items, he's an oris, a real estate broker. If there's no marisayin and it's not kaveh malachta, he could sell it on Shabbos. A sales representative, again, if it's done right, where there's no amir la'akum, where there's no kaveh malachta, and there is an oris relationship, it's mutter. If the only fair or show is on Shabbos, it's asa. And even an oris kaveh malachta is asa. A secretary could work at home if it's done right. You're not forcing them to work on Shabbos, and they're paid per piece. A roof on a garden is zilzul Shabbos and marisayin. Even if it's not marisayin, it's still zilzul Shabbos. Construction, but der klal, should come to a halt on Shabbos. If someone has a special need, he should consult with the Rav. But construction is generally across the board stopped on Shabbos. To run a store or factory, let's be careful, should only be done with the Rav's consult, because there are details that have to be taken care of. PayPal or program payment is okay, as long as it's not kivei malachte. Answering service, a call center, if it's done right, that he's paid per call, and it's not kaveh malachti, is okay. And regarding ownership or partnership in a nursing home or a lawyer's or a law firm, it has to be done right. Ask a sheilas chachim, and the Shabbos should bring us the bracha the way it's supposed to. I couldn't talk to you all. Thank you all for listening.